a little glitch in the beginning, but all is well now. So glad you're here. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. And just a reminder that the theme here tonight is inspired by the fire, meaning pretend you're with friends around a bonfire, grab something a little warm. This is my little tea cup. That is also, we have a few of these maybe left in our shop. If not, we can probably get some more, but that's what this is all about, kind of just some friends, Outdoor Pursuits members and friends getting together on these cold winter nights to learn some things. So
makes sense. Hey, Jeff, would you like a book?
Oh, certainly. That'd be great.
What's your address?
Let's see. It's 124 Keithler, Keethler Drive South, and that's in Westerville, 43081.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Matt, do you want one?
he does.
Sorry, it does. I would like one. I'm a little bit quicker than my mute button suggests.
I thought you were a little slow there, man.
But I think I would. I think it would be a great educational resource
Good.
for me in the office.
You want to email me your address or give it to me now, or what do you want to do?
I'll email it to you, Ken.
Okay, good deal.
So we should have substantially more people showing up here in the next few minutes.
Okay.
Um,
I'll give them a couple minutes. I sent out a reminder today too, so.
okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if that was appropriate for Zoom or not.
Here come some people. I just see them in the waiting room. So while we're waiting to get started too, it's a good idea if you're new to Zoom just to familiarize yourself with the chat button, which is usually on your screen. It's located on the lower right-hand corner area where it says more. If you click on that, you'll see a menu come up and chat will be in there. So make sure you know where that is in case you want to add a question. We'll have time for questions at the end.
Yes, I'll monitor the chat box, and if any questions come up, I can announce those. I think the idea here is to be casual and have the opportunity to ask questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people are coming in now. All right, well, my clock on my phone says 7 o'clock. So Matt, if you could just monitor the chat, that would be great. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. This is a series of webinars that Outdoor Pursuits is putting on this year. It's a different sort of year, sort of like it was last year. And just to kind of engage our members and friends of the organization, we're having these, we're calling them Inspired by the Fire. We actually planned to have some of them last year with a real bonfire down at our offices in the Columbus area, just south of downtown. But for now, if you have something warm, a little warm beverage, I held up my little teacup earlier. Pretend you're with friends around a fire, and it's just an opportunity to tonight explore the topic of bicycle law and cycling rights. But before we jump into it, I just want to make a note that as you all are coming in, you should be muted. And that's just to make sure that, there's not sirens or dogs barking, that sort of thing. We ask that you stay on mute. And if you have questions as the presentation continues, go ahead and put it in the chat box. And like I said, Matt and myself will be looking at the chat box, and we'll try to get to those questions at the end of Ken's presentation. We'll have a poll or two to kick it off, and just to get everybody thinking about bicycle law. But before that, I want to have Jeff Perrone here talk a little bit about next week's session. Jeff?
Oh, thanks, Lisa. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our next Inspire by the Fire, which will be 1 week from tonight at 7 p.m. And this is titled Winter Cycling 101, which we thought's a pretty timely topic, since we're going to see some snow this weekend and back into the 30s again. And what we have is a panel of 3 really dedicated winter cyclists, and they kind of approach this from different ways. We have a couple who are real dedicated commuters, and then another one who is a really dedicated road rider. She's a racer, and she rides a lot of gravel roads, and so she'll go out, in really cold weather and do 50 miles on a gravel road in the middle of nowhere, which requires a lot of thinking and preparation, proper dressing, and knowing about your equipment, your bike, and probably having a few bailout plans as well. And so all these folks are just really interesting people, and they have just a lot of experience. And we have another guest too who will appear via video, and he's an ultra distance cyclist, and he's done Paris-Brest, Paris, and just long races. So he trains the year round. So he's always out there in the cold doing long rides. And so he definitely has a lot of insights to offer. And the great thing about these Inspired by the Fire, and I think the winter cycling is a good example of it, and tonight's session with Ken, is that they're interactive. I mean, you can go on YouTube and find all sorts of like Global Cycling Network videos on winter cycling and various other topics, but the folks on our Inspired by the Fire, they're kind of our local experts, and you get the chance to pick their brains, and the expertise they have kind of is very pertinent to where we live, the climate and the roads and everything where we're at. So I highly encourage you to join us next week, and you can go to the calendar on the Outdoor Pursuits website and just follow the link for the Winter Cycling 101 session, and hope to see you next week.
Thanks, Jeff. And for those of you who don't know Jeff, he's the Great Ohio Bicycle Adventure Director and contributes in a lot of different ways to the organization. Matt Wolf is also on the line, and he is our programming director. He takes care of a lot of other things. We wear a lot of hats since it's a small office. And I'm Lisa Darris. I'm the TOSERV director, and also the director of many other various outdoor pursuit related activities. Just to kind of get us started here, before I introduce Ken, we're going to take a quick little poll just to see what some of your concerns are, and what kind of cycling you like to do. So a poll should be appearing in front of you right now. So go ahead, and there should be 2 questions on this poll. I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to take it. Looks like everyone's inputting here. Okay, I'll give you 1 more minute. Looks like most of you have voted. Got about 85%, so I'm gonna go ahead and end it. We'll share the results so everyone can just kind of take a look at our audience here. Okay, so a lot of you do road and both types of cycling. Yeah, the distracted, dangerous drivers, that's a big one. I'm sure Ken is going to hit on that here in just a few minutes. Okay, now for the next poll, we'll take a little poll on safe practices. So put on your honesty caps and tell us what your safety practices are. Aw, you guys are great. Okay, looks like most people have voted. All right, look at this. Yes, always wear a helmet, very good. And yeah, the lights. Man, my light game sometimes lacks. I'm always looking for batteries or chargers or, you know, but okay. Thank you for, oh, maybe I hadn't shared it yet, but now you guys can see what the results are there. All right. So thanks for taking the poll. I am now ready to introduce our speaker for the evening, Ken Knabe. Ken is a Bike Cleveland corporate sponsor, and he is co-author of Bikes and the Law section on the website, on the Bike Cleveland website. He serves on the boards of the Ohio Bicycle Federation and the Ohio to Erie Trail, and he co-chairs the Maintenance and Vehicle Fleet Subcommittee of the City of Cleveland's Vision Zero Task Force. Vision Zero is a strategy designed to reduce to zero the number of traffic fatalities and severe injuries on our roads for all users. Boy, I wish Columbus had something like that. He is representing numerous cyclists injured in bike crashes and was injured in a bike crash caused by an unsafe motorist. His legal practice has a dual focus: safety and crash prevention via knowledge of the law for cyclists and guiding cyclists who have been injured through the legally complex process on their road to recovery. Bike event sponsorships, publishing and teaching bike education and safety classes are other ways that Ken actively advocates for the cycling community. So we are really excited to have him share some of his knowledge tonight. And with no further delay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ken.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I really appreciate that introduction. I want to thank you and Matt and Jeff for the opportunity to speak to everyone around the fire and get to talk a little bit about cycling, which is really my life. And I think it's probably a big part of everybody's life who's on this Zoom call. So I hope that we can get some interesting topics discussed and that we can all learn a little. And I can always learn a little more every time I do from these Zoom and the questions that I get. Interesting enough, in 2020, what became an essential business in Ohio, lo and behold, it was cycling. And why is that? Why is cycling so important? Well, it's important because of the health benefits, the recreation, and people use it for transportation. And I know I'm speaking to the choir on that here. So what did we see? We saw a big uptick in riders. A lot of people bought bikes, a lot of people fixed their bikes, and now all of a sudden we have a lot of people out on the road. But there was no uptick in cycling education. There was no movement to teach these new cyclists what the present laws were. And so I wrote a book to try to fill in the gap of knowledge that exists between what drivers learn in driver's education and they don't learn about cyclists, and what cyclists don't learn at all until they're out on the road or attending seminars such as this. So that's basically why I wrote the book and why I do what I do as far as talking to groups about cycling. The biggest thing about cycling that everyone, I think, needs to know is your rights. What are your rights? How do you cycle right? And what are your responsibilities, which tells you how to cycle right. The big thing is a bike is a vehicle. It is not a toy. It is an actually defined in the Ohio Revised Code as a vehicle. And what does that mean? It means that we have an absolute right to ride on the road. We can't be confined to the sidewalks. We can't be confined to the all-purpose trails unless it's a limited access highway. And you know those because before you get on, you see a big arrow X through the bike. So you can't get on the highway on your bike. Other than that, we have an absolute right to ride on the road. So what does that mean? We have road rights. And we are on our way. We're not in the way of motorists like a lot of motorists think that we are, but legally we are not. Now, I know that we can't be confined to the sidewalk or the all-purpose trail, but everyone should know that many places prohibit cyclists from riding on the sidewalk. In Cleveland, you cannot ride on the sidewalk if you're in a business district. In Columbus, you cannot ride on the sidewalk, period, unless it's part of a multi-use path or you're riding a children's bike that's 30 inches or more in height, which I don't think anybody here is riding. So the sidewalk is really a little bit beyond where you should be riding. So then we get to the question, well, since we're allowed on the road and we're vehicles, how do we ride? Well, it's not rocket science. We ride our bikes similar to the way we drive our cars, which means we ride in the direction of traffic. We follow the traffic laws. When I see cyclists riding in the opposite direction, it's like, oh man, really? And why do we want to do that? We want to do that because we want to get legal term here, the right of way. If you're riding in the direction of traffic and you're following the law, you have the right to proceed uninterruptedly. And if something untoward happens, you're hit, or if something bad happens, you had the right of way because you were following the rules of the road and the law, and that's why you want to do it. That brings us to another issue. Since we're a vehicle, can we get a ticket? Anybody got any ideas whether we can get tickets? And I see a lot of heads going yes, and you're absolutely right. You can get a ticket for a traffic violation on a bike. Know this though, you cannot have any points on your license if you get a traffic ticket. I have seen many cyclists here in Cleveland, they're riding down a prohibited road, they get a ticket, and lo and behold, they got 2 points on their license because either the BMV or the court didn't designate that this is a bike violation and no points can be assessed. Now, there is one major exception to that, and that is, if this was all vodka, okay, that is a DUI. With the DUI, you get all the points, all the suspensions, all the high-risk insurance, just like when you're driving a car. So that's what you need to know about that. Now, when I say you got to follow laws, that means you got to stop the red lights and the stop signs? Yes, you do. Ohio has a law, and people misconstrue this law. It's called the dead red law. And the only time you can go through a red light is after you stop and you determine that the light is not functioning, or the light cannot detect you because you're on a bike and it will not turn to green. So you sit there and you wait and wait, and when you know you can't go because the light's not detecting you, only then can you go. And only then can you move, and you do not have the right of way, so you better be careful when you go through that red light. And that's the only time in Ohio that you're allowed. Now, at Idaho, they treat red lights like stop signs and stop signs like yield. And is Ohio doing that? Not yet. I'd like to see that happen, but that is not the law yet in the state of Ohio. So another question that comes up, since we're vehicles, where do we ride? Well, there's a code section in the Ohio Revised Code that says we ride to the right side as practicable. It doesn't say as we ride as far to the right as possible. That is not the law. It's practicable. If there's a hole there, if there's a car there, if there's someone there, you don't have to ride on the far right side of the road if there are obstacles in your way or dangerous things on that road. Another exception to that is if the road is too narrow that a car cannot safely pass you, which by the way is like most lanes in Ohio, then you can take the whole lane. So the rule that you have to ride all the way to the right of the road as possible is not true. And there are a lot of exceptions to riding on the right side of the road. But generally, if you're out on the road riding, try to stay to the right if you can do that safely. How many of us can ride? Well, the Ohio Revised Code is a little strange on this one. It says we cannot, cyclists, when I say we, of course I'm talking about cyclists, cannot ride more than 2 abreast. Now that is interpreted to mean that cyclists can ride 2 abreast. The metro parks here in Cleveland have interpreted that, say yes, cyclists can ride 2 abreast. There are some, very few cities that still do not allow riding 2 abreast. I think those code sections are in conflict with the Ohio Revised Code because I think Ohio is saying you can ride 2 abreast. Does that mean every time you go on the road, you should ride 2 abreast? There are situations where riding 2 abreast might not be the greatest idea. But it's my opinion that in Ohio, you can ride 2 abreast. And then we move into hand signals, okay? Ohio requires hand signals, and a lot of cyclists don't know this. And there are exceptions to all these rules. So if you want to turn right, what do? Do the right turn. If you want to do the old school right turn, you do one of these. If you want to turn left, you do that. And if you want to stop, you put your arm back. And we all know these particular hand signals. Do you always have to give them? Well, no, but you know, when we're out there cycling, what helps us? Predictability. If you're going to move into the lane, move somewhere, point. If you're going to turn, try to get that signal out. The only time you're not required to signal when you're turning is if you're in a turn lane only, or this is a big one, you feel unsafe in doing it. So you're riding pretty fast and you're going to make a left and there's other cars around. You don't feel like it's safe for you to go like this. You do not have to give a signal. And it never has to be held continuously. So you don't have to like get up to make a left turn every so you know you're here all the time. One time. That's all you got to do. Make that signal. And I'd advise to try to make any signals that you can if you're turning right or you're turning left. But don't do it if it's dangerous and you don't have to hold it continuously. That brings us to interesting issues, right? So if you have to ride on the right side of the road and now you're going to make a left turn, that puts you in a little funny position. Why? Because you got to get over to the left side of that lane to make the left turn, but you're supposed to be riding on the right. So there's some danger there when you're going to make that left turn that you have to get over onto the left side of the lane to do it. And so you got to anticipate that that's going to happen. You got to make sure that when you do that, there's no cars coming up behind you that could get in your way. Another way to take the sting out of a left-hand turn are what's called bike boxes. And I don't know if Columbus has them, but Cleveland does. And all a bike box is, when you're going to make that left turn, you don't make it. You cross the street to the other side, you turn your bike, and then you proceed that way so that you don't have to make that left turn. You don't have to get in that left lane where now you're in jeopardy and you have some issues getting over there.
Yeah,
On the right turn, you should be as far to the right. You should be to the right of the lane when you make the right turn. Those are how you turn in the state of Ohio. Let's talk about helmets. We got 100% here on everybody wears a helmet, and that's great. That's smart. But there is no Ohio law and no federal law that requires us to wear helmets. It is a personal and not a legal choice in Ohio. In some cities, they require anyone under 18, like Columbus, you have to wear a helmet. So minors, in some cities, a lot of cities actually do have to wear helmets. And in adults, there's very few cities that require helmets for adults, but there are a few around. And there is no Ohio law that requires it. Why is it a good idea? I'm preaching to the choir here because 2/3 of the fatal accidents and injuries are to people that were not wearing helmets. Let me tell you a helmet story. You know, I do a lot of bike crashes, accidents, and I say, let me see your helmet. Okay, and they give me their helmet. Any cracks in your helmet? No. Okay, well, let me see the inside. I turn it over, and lo and behold, crack here, crack here, crack here. And I always think that was your head. Your head would have cracked there if you didn't have the helmet. So is it important to wear one? Yes, but it's a personal choice. Moving on down the road here to another issue, and I saw this on the poll. People are afraid that they're not seen on the road. Okay, that's called visibility. That's called conspicuity. It's a big word. All it means is, are you visible? There is no legal requirement in Ohio about what type of clothing you wear. It is totally a personal choice on what you want to buy, what you want to wear. The state can't force you to wear a bright reflective vest when you ride. But as you know, being visible could help you. And bright, reflective, contrasting clothing is highly visible when you're on a bicycle. That's not a defense to a careless driver that hits you and says, well, they weren't wearing a vest or they didn't have bright clothing. No, you still should have seen the cyclist and you still shouldn't have hit the cyclist. And it's like saying, if you're driving a car and the car gets rear-ended, well, you should have painted the car bright green, so we would have seen it better. I mean, that's not the law, but it's something to think about when you're out there on the road if you want to get yourself more visible than what's legally required. Lights. I saw, Lisa, you disappointed me there a little, Lisa, because I think you're one of the sometimes you wear a light at night. I don't know. I'm only joshing you. But,
I know, I'm bad. It's because I forget to charge them up, and then I'll be riding for like 10 minutes, and wouldn't you know it, that's when they.
I have the solution. Okay. I bought a house. Okay. The guy had an aquarium in the basement. There are 17 outlets in one little room. I have lights at every outlet. So I'm never going to have a dead light. And
Nice.
why is that? Because Ohio law is completely and utterly clear that from sundown to sunrise, you have to have a front white light, right? And you have to have a rear red light. And what happens? Well, your light the battery's dead, and now it's nighttime, and now you're riding without a light. That's not good. So I get rechargeable ones. I don't have any batteries in any of my stuff. And I do the rechargeable because I'm always wanting to have a light. So what happens? You're out on the road, you're having a good time. It's 6 o'clock, then it's 7 o'clock, and now it's 8 o'clock. You're trying to get home. Well, lo and behold, you're not going to make it till past 9, and now it's dark, and now you don't have lights, and now you can't be seen, and now you're violating Ohio law. Not all the time. You might be riding under some street lights and you'd be highly visible, but the law does require you to have those lights. What I do too, and also another little nuance is if it's inclement weather, if it's raining or it's foggy, you're supposed to have the white front light and the red rear light. So if you don't have those all the time and it starts to rain or the visibility is low, you're technically violating the law. I always add a little extra. I take the fork in the front and I use a white light on the fork. I lasso it around so it's heading out into the lane. The red light's going back so they can see you behind. The white light's going forward so they can see the front of you. There's nothing showing on the side. So I take this light and I put it in my fork on the left and I turn it on and it's white, front white. So that's my side defense. And in the back on the seat stays, I'll put another red light. It's got to be skinny because your seat stays are skinny like this. So now I got side, I got front on both sides. And if you really want to get crazy and it's night, you might want to get one of these. I mean, this thing is hard to miss. Fun with that. But the key there is, you know, there's other times during the day you might need those lights. So don't get the battery ones, get the ones that recharge and keep recharging them. So how can a driver, what can a driver do to avoid getting into a tangle with a cyclist, hitting a cyclist? Well, I always think they got to look 3 ways. They got to look to the left for a car, look to the right for a car, and they got to look for a bike. They are not cars. They're not as easy to detect, but they have to know they're out there and they need to look at it. They need to give us 3 feet when they're passing us. So, you know, drivers look 3 ways, give us 3 feet. That's what I tell them. A lot of drivers don't know they can pass us on a double yellow. They can pass us if the cyclist is going half the speed. So say it's a 30-mile-an-hour road, the cyclist is going 15. The driver can pass them as long as he's not exceeding twice what the cyclist is doing and he's not exceeding the speed limit, he or she. So in that situation, a driver can pass a cyclist. And we've all seen drivers that won't pass us on a double yellow. And it's like, please just pass. Let's just roll on so we can roll on, but they don't know that they can't. Big thing, and I saw this in the poll, is what is the most dangerous device out on the road for any cyclist? And that is this, the iPhone. And we all know this is the most dangerous thing because it provides distraction. And distraction is like driving drunk. So anybody who's texting on that phone or looking at their emails is drunk. And because of that, they could very easily not see you and cause an accident. So what we're trying to do in the Ohio Board of Federation, and I think it's going to come to pass, is make distracted driving a primary offense. That means if a police officer sees a driver texting or reading an email that didn't even cause a traffic violation, if it's primary, they can pull them over and give them a ticket for that. Right now it's secondary and it has to be in connection with another traffic offense, but that's going to pass and it needs to pass for our safety out on the roads. Another problem that drivers have is opening the doors on the road and hitting us. And how do they avoid that? With what's called the Dutch reach. In other words, when you're opening that door, you're a driver, you take your right hand and you twist it around and you open the door with your right hand, it causes you to look down the road and see that cyclist coming that you're going to open the door on and cause some real damage. And then let's talk a little bit about what kind of crashes happen. They even have names now. I mean, there's the rear ender, and of course we know that the car hits you from behind. There's a left cross where the car turns left and hits you, and there's two of the right hooks. One, you're ahead of the car and it comes around and hooks you. The other one, the car's ahead of you, it doesn't see you, and they hook right into you. So they even have names. So they do happen. How can we prevent that? Really, we can't. It's really the drivers that need to do that. They need to be aware of our presence, but we need to be detected. And I've developed something I call the Stobie rule, and it's in my book. Gary Stobie and I went to grade school, high school, different high schools together. But you know, back in the 70s, all the cars were garbage. And like he had a Chevy, a 68 Chevy, and the horns never worked. So we would be out driving somewhere and he would just yell instead of use his horn, and people would actually hear him and stop. So if you're riding your bike, and you see that car about to pull out in front of you, right in front of you, and they're not making eye contact, and now they're starting to move, hey, it saved me so many times. I mean, there's obviously no law that requires you to yell at these people, but it certainly wakes them up and avoids untoward things. Real quick, if it's unfortunate then you are hit, the biggest and best thing you can do is always call the police. I don't care if it's Mother Teresa or the nicest lady in the world. Oh, I'm so sorry. You need to call the police. Why? You need a record of what happened. You need where it happened. You need them to get the witnesses for you. So never not call the police. Check for surveillance footage. There's a ton of footage now in the cities. There's a ton of footage on buildings that could show exactly what happened. The evidence is your bike. Always keep your, don't fix your bike, don't fix the tires, don't clean your clothes, leave it all, it's all evidence. And I have cards that I pass out that can fit into the back of your jerseys that tell you what to do in the unfortunate circumstances if you are hit. And those bike cards are free. I'll send them to anybody that wants them. And also on the other side, it has all the laws that favor you, that you can ride two abreast and what dead red is and so on and so forth. Real quickly, I don't want to harp on this point, but every cyclist should have insurance. And if you have car insurance, you should have what's called uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. So if you're hit by a car and that car has minimum coverage, you can cover yourself for up to the limits that you purchase. So it's called U coverage, uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. You can also, if you don't have a car, get bike insurance. It's not as good, but it can cover you if you don't have any car insurance. Lisa, that's enough of that stuff. Can we talk a little bit about the Ohio to Erie Trail and how great a resource that is for all the cyclists, especially around Columbus? Because I was coming from Millersburg and we go through the Bridge of Dreams and then we head into Columbus. And it's a little confusing there around Columbus, but then you can head out to Yellow Springs, Xenia. And I just think Columbus is a bustling area for riding. And the Ohio to Erie Trail, which I'm on the board with Lisa, runs from Cleveland to Cincinnati through Millersburg, then to Columbus, then to Xenia, and then to Cincinnati. And if you haven't done it, get a few friends and take the ride. It's something you absolutely never forget. Almost a large percent of it is on trails too. So it's safe, it's nice, and it's just a great event. So that's all I have. If there are any questions, I can see the chat there. I'm gonna take a look at that.
Yeah, just real quick regarding the Ohio to Erie Trail, like Ken said, he and I work a lot together with making progress with that trail. Columbus, though, is a little tricky because there is some roadway. The urban areas are the hardest part to complete the trail, of course, because there's no corridors left. They're just their streets. And so we recently did an update on the Ohio to Erie Trail website that has a map and a turn-by-turn instructions for how to get through Columbus. So if you're interested in that, contact me at some point. And of course, I can always ride with you. I know it pretty well in Columbus too. So
I love, go ahead. Sorry, Lisa. You go
yeah,
ahead.
that's all I was going to say about
Okay.
Ohio to Erie.
I love some of the chat. Columbus has boxes. So Columbus has bike boxes. And then COP, okay, love them, as I don't like playing Frogger downtown. That's when the left-hand turn is like playing Frogger. And here's Aaron that uses daytime daylight visible tail lights on the road to be visible. That's definitely an option that you can take, but I wouldn't just use the tail light. I'd use the front light too if you're going to do it. There's no legal requirement to do that during the day, but if you're going to put one on the rear, why not put one on the front and blink it? It might give you some added visibility, but obviously the red one will do more for that. And yes, many organized rides do require helmets because they have group insurance that requires the club members to be wearing helmets. Are there any laws around extra lights on a bike? No, there are no lights, extra lights other than the front white and the red rear. I ride a recumbent bike, and like a lot of bent trike riders use lighted flag poles, strobing yellow lights in order to be seen. Love it, love it. I have got cases where I had a paracyclist with flags, two flags on the back of his wheelchair, his race wheelchair, and he got hit from behind, and there's absolutely just no excuse for what happened there. I think it's a great idea if you're doing a recumbent to have flags. Any reflectors required in Ohio? Yeah. Well, reflectors are required in Ohio at night, but if you have lights, and most of these do a dual purpose. So they act as a reflector and as a red light. So I don't think you have to have both a reflector and a red light. Another one, I own two of them now, front and back, in case one goes dead. Excellent, smart. Should we call the police if threatened by a driver? Yeah, don't react. Don't you become the threatener in those situations. If you get your phone out and actually video the person that is harassing you, that will help the police do something about it. Usually they take off, you say, hey, they did this or that, and maybe you get the license plate and they go, well, nothing happened, right? And they don't often do things about that. But I totally think if you are harassed, you should call the police and report it. There are many motorists out there that think you shouldn't be on the road. I'm going to get you off the road. And they lean over, into you on the road. That is so dangerous and so criminal to me that they have to be stopped. The cyclists need to walk their bike across a crosswalk, or can we ride? Excellent question. The answer to that is the safest way to cross a crosswalk is to become a pedestrian under the law by walking your bike. You have the most rights. But if there is no law that says you cannot ride your bike in a crosswalk, you can definitely ride it into the crosswalk, but you can't fly through there. You have to go slow, and you have to give the pedestrians the right of way. So that's the answer to that question. Anybody have any other ones? Any comments, concerns?
Do you want to talk about your book for a second?
Sure. I wrote this book. It came out in the latter part of the year. It took a couple of years to write it. The laws kept changing. We had the pandemic. I'm really excited about how up to date it is. The only difference is Ohio just passed a new law concerning scooters, e-scooters, which really basically corresponds to what Columbus and Cleveland already had on the books. E-scooters are treated like bikes. They can't go more than 20 miles an hour. You have to be wearing a helmet if you're on them. They can ride in the bike lane and they can ride on the bike trail, absent other regulations by other departments, but they cannot and should not be ridden on the sidewalks. And that's now state law. Just got signed in by Governor DeWine.
So in the chat, I put how to order Ken's new book, and then we had one more question come through. I don't know if this is a question for Ken or not. How do you deal with family members who loathe cyclists and you are one?
You kind of take a step back. You know, my sister once said, "Why are you guys, you know, riding on the road in the metro parks and not on the trail?" And my blood started to boil a little. I go, "Man, that's my sister, and she's a good person. She just doesn't know. She just doesn't know." So I try to educate. I try to say, "Hey, look, we're vehicles. If I was on that bike trail going 20 miles an hour, I'd be running over the woman walking her dog or the pedestrians walking. It's unsafe for us to be there. And we have every right to ride on the road." Will that convince them or not? I don't know, but I try to just to educate and never get, you know, upset about it. That's a good question. It really is.
We had another one come through, and I'm sorry, Matt, if you want to jump in here. I'm kind of just going with it. Are e-bikes
Go right ahead.
Are e-bikes limited on trails based on their power rating or just speed?
They're based on a class. They go in classes. They go 1, 2, and 3. Without getting into great details, 3 is like pretty strong bike. And the 3s are generally not allowed on the trails, but the 1 and 2s are. So it really, on the bottom of your bike stem by the pedals, it'll tell you what class you have. And if it's a 3, you really can't be riding on the trails in it. And I got a whole chapter on e-bikes in the book, chapter 12. Parker, my editor, is showing me that right now.
We had one more question. If I organize a pickup ride among friends, can I be held liable if someone gets injured, say while crossing a busy intersection?
Generally, no. Generally, there's some assumption of a risk in a group ride, but if you're careless, you could be sued, but I don't think you would have to be actively negligent just because you organized a ride and someone got hurt. No, you couldn't be sued. You could only be sued if during the ride you said, "Hey, you know, blow through that red light," or did something that was negligent, like running into them too, because you weren't looking. Yeah, you could be sued. And your homeowner should cover that, by the way, if that would happen.
Okay. Anyone else? If you have any questions, put it in chat, or we're a small group, so you can also unmute yourself if you want to ask anything else here.
Oh yeah, also, it's interesting in my book, bike cases in Ohio, all these questions kind of get answered in cases. But the thing is about these cases, they could go either way. I mean, sometimes the cyclist wins, sometimes the cyclist loses. Sometimes the driver gets convicted of a felony. Sometimes the driver gets off. I mean, it's really fact specific on all these things. But, you know, generally, if you're riding within your rights in the right of way, the police have no right to stop you. But if they wrongly do, probably the best thing is to cooperate so you don't get tased and you don't get charged. And you pull out my cards and say, yes, we can ride 2 abreast, because oftentimes the police may not even know what the law is. But I love that chapter on chapter 10 on Ohio bike cases. What happens if you hit a hole? Where's the liability there? So on and so forth. A lot of interesting stuff. Vic, anything?
I have a question, Ken.
Yeah.
Is it required, is Ohio revised code require us to dismount and ride across railroad tracks? Or walk across railroad tracks?
I have never known that to be the law. Have I looked at that out specifically? No. Have I ridden over a million railroad tracks? Yes. You can, obviously there's a way to ride over them without, you can't ride sideways on those. You have to hit them direct. I had a friend that broke his shoulder doing that, but I don't know that there is any law prohibiting that. I don't think there is, but I haven't looked it up.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Ken. Thanks for sharing
Thank you, Lisa.
your
And
knowledge.
thanks everybody for joining me. I love that you're all out there on the road, and keep safe and keep healthy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one more question. It was accidentally sent to me on a direct message rather than everybody. The question's, does riding to the right, as far as practicable, vary with when there's a bike lane present? I guess
That's a good question.
Yeah.
If there's a bike lane present, I don't think you have to worry about riding to the right as long as you're in the bike lane. I mean, you don't have to ride to the right of the bike lane. Do you have to ride in the bike lane? No, you don't. So if you don't, you'd have to ride to the right of the road. I mean, if there's a bike lane, I try to ride in it. Do you have to? No. But certainly you do not have to ride to the right of a bike lane if it's a normal, fairly thin lane.
Okay. Well, I hope to see everyone at some future Inspired by the Fires, and I hope you are all either practicing your cold weather riding, or perhaps you're on a trainer to stay in shape in Ohio over the cold weather season. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'd
Thank you,
like
everybody.
to say thank you too for those who joined tonight and also donated to support this educational series. We are a nonprofit, and like a lot of organizations, this has been a year that we're struggling. So thank you. Your donations are appreciated.
Great. Nice job, Lisa, Matt, Jeff. Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Ken.
you.
Thanks, Parker.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.